Hello, I am Serena Wright, part of the federal programs. I am the Title III program specialist, and this short video will go over the home language survey. First, start off with the purpose of the home language survey, and you will see it referenced here sometimes as HLS. So the home language survey is a questionnaire given to parents or guardians that helps schools and LEAs identify which students are potential ELs and who will require assessment of their English language proficiency, commonly referred to as an ELP, to determine whether they are eligible for language assistance services. So this excerpt comes from the EL Toolkit referenced on page 1, and the EL Toolkit was developed by the Department of Education, the Office of English Language Acquisition specifically. So the HLS is the first step in identifying students who may speak another language. The HLS must be given to all students, even if you know their home language. So if you have a high population of German-speaking students, and you know that their home language is German and that they are learning English at school, the home language survey must still be given to those students upon enrollment, new enrollment. So typically those are kindergartners or students coming into the school for the first time. So even if you already know that their parents only speak Spanish and that the students will potentially speak Spanish, you must still give the home language survey to all newly enrolled students. So here I have included some links to the current home language survey and the current home language survey translated in Spanish. In Transact, and I have also included that link here, you will find the home language survey under state notices. So Transact is a place where parent notices will be found for mostly federal programs, but it is a great resource that as your school, you can download the form and the form auto-populates with your school information, and then you can send those forms home to parents. And it will also be a large part, those forms in Transact will be a large part of monitoring. A piece that I amplified in the home language survey, besides updating logos and names for our new superintendent, but I also amplified the instructions or the information that parents will receive about the home language survey. So it says that the home language survey is used by the schools to ensure that their children receive high quality education that is accessible to them. So we need to find out what languages are spoken in the home. And I did ensure that I put responses may include assessing students' English language proficiency. Families need to realize the purpose behind the home language survey. It is not to be against bilingualism or multilingualism. It is not for immigration purposes where we would report whether the families are legally in this country or what languages they speak. It is not for determining legal status. Parents need to know and really understand through our communication with them that the home language survey is solely used to offer appropriate educational services. A lot of times parents may have different ideas or opinions about what this home language survey and its purpose is. So oftentimes it may lead to misidentification or parents being upset about their student being assessed, that they didn't know this was going to happen, which is why I made sure that we communicated clearly the purpose of the home language survey. However, we know that many families will not stop to read all of the writing, especially when they're enrolling their child. They're ensuring that they're filling in each box. So it is the school's responsibility to talk to families and communicate with them that the purpose is only to provide accurate educational services to their children. This next section of the home language survey is pretty self-explanatory, with the student's name, parent or guardian name, their contact information, including email, phone number, so that you can contact parents if you have questions about any of the responses on the home language survey. You do not need to have parents fill out a new home language survey each year. The goal for our state is that each student only fills out a home language survey once per enrollment. So when they enroll in a Montana school for the first time, they fill out a home language survey. What we don't want are several different versions of the home language survey in their cumulative folder, and students are being screened over and over and over. The home language survey should be given once. However, I do realize that enrollment packets, sometimes it's challenging to take out certain documents. So if the home language survey needs to be included in the packet just for ease, that is fine. However, the EL coordinator or whomever receives the home language survey just needs to take a little extra time to determine if the student had already been previously identified or if the student needs to be screened. These are the 4 main home language survey questions, and through the responses to these questions, we will determine what languages or language the student uses, hears, reads, and writes. So the first 3 questions ask about the student and what languages other than English are used by the student. And question 4 is more what languages are spoken around the student. So a heritage or ancestral language for number 4 does not necessarily mean that the student is automatically an English learner or is automatically flagged for assessment using the WIDA screener. What we are trying to figure out with number 4 is what other languages may affect the student's progress in English. So it may mean that additional information is required from parents to really clearly understand the child's exposure to heritage or ancestral languages. So questions 1 through 3 will typically flag English language screening from the WIDA screener if a language other than English is evident. Question 4 is not an automatic screening question. If they mark yes for question 4, you will not automatically assess or screen the student's English language proficiency. You may need to seek additional information from parents. The last 3 questions on the home language survey are really trying to figure out what language is spoken in the home and what language of impact there may be, or a heritage language. So question 5 will support question 1, 2, and 3. So what languages are spoken in the home? Parents will identify their home language. Question number 6 is where parents will identify their heritage language, and it is a language that may impact the student's academic progress. This is supporting number 4, so it's those languages that are around the student, in the community, spoken by family members. And question 7, if parents need documents and school-related information translated, this is where they would list their preferred language of communication. So there's a little asterisk here. For question number 6, students may not speak the language. So whatever the language of impact is, they may not speak the language, but due to cultural norms, their English language usage may be different. So the words that they use or their vocabulary may be a little bit different. Maybe it's an accent. Maybe it is just cultural differences. So thinking about our Native American students and their cultural norms, I had learned that it is not typical for Native American children, especially, to speak up unless they are directly asked a question. Maybe the plurals are a little bit different. So, and that is not specific to Native Americans, but it's also the acts versus ask language differences. So cultural norms that may bring about different usage of English language. That does not mean that their English is impacted and they are automatically English learners. It again is something to understand their exposure or what their language usage is in the community. I've included a sample home language survey. So do we screen, do we not screen? So looking at this home language survey, the child's first language is something other than English. The child understands or communicates in the home using a language other than English. The child does not read or write any other languages other than English, but the child does have exposure to a heritage or ancestral language spoken by family, friends, or community members. So number 5, what language is used in the home? Spanish. What language is the child exposed to in the community or with family members and friends? Spanish. What language do parents prefer to receive school communication? English. So what this home language tells you is that the student speaks Spanish, and Spanish is used in the home, so they are a bilingual family, which is why parents are okay with information coming home in English. This student you would screen. So you would screen the student because they understand and communicate in another language. We just want to ensure that they are able to understand and access academic work, academic curriculum. One thing to note here, since the child does not read or write in any other language other than English, supporting the child by giving them translated text to read would not be beneficial. So again, the child does not read or write in Spanish, so translated materials would not be beneficial. Okay, so the student just needs to be screened to see if they are in fact an English learner. Sample home language survey number 2, would we screen? So the child's first language, anything other than English? No. Does the child understand or communicate in a language other than English? No. Does the child read or write in another language other than English? No. Does your child have exposure to a heritage or ancestral language? Yes. So number 5, what language other than English does your child hear or use in the home? There's nothing marked. However, for the ancestral or heritage language, the parents marked Cree. So, do parents need any translated materials? No. For this home language survey, the student clearly speaks English. They may live in a community that speaks Cree or some Cree, or maybe the family is trying to relearn their heritage language, but English is their home language. Maybe they have a couple words, maybe they call grandma or auntie a different name in their heritage language. This is where you would do one of 2 things. Call and ask for additional information. But in this one, you would not screen the student. So you don't have to screen the student because they have heritage or ancestral language, but calling the parent and finding out what level of language is spoken around the community, that could be something that you keep in mind when you are developing academic programming for this student. Will they need extra support? Do we need to reach out to our IFA coordinator to really understand cultural differences with language? Sample home language survey number 3. Now you will see that this entire home language survey is in Spanish. So parents requested this form in Spanish, but they're saying their child only speaks English. They're saying that in the community and with family, Spanish is spoken, and parents are requesting translated materials into Spanish. So this home language survey is one that I have seen before. I have seen that parents fill out the entire Spanish form saying their child only speaks English. This is where I would call the parent and ask for more information. The Spanish form was completed, but parents state that the student's first language was English, and they also state that the child does not speak, understand, read, or write any other language. So I would wonder, how are they communicating with parents? Parents would like communication to be in Spanish, but the child only uses English? So this is not unheard of. The parents may be learning English or may be partially bilingual or, early levels of bilingualism between Spanish and English, and they just feel more comfortable using Spanish. But it is very possible that the child does not use Spanish at home. Their parents may speak to them in Spanish, and the child may understand, but responds in English. So this is where number 2, does the child use or understand a language other than English? The parent marked no. I would wonder how the child is communicating with their parent. If they are using English, they still have to understand the Spanish from the parents. Maybe the child doesn't speak Spanish, and the parents use as much English as they have at home to communicate with the child, but then that would also be a language of impact, that the parent's level of English may be impacting the child's proficiency in English. This is the identification timeline. So the first step is reviewing all home language surveys with a language other than English marked on any of the questions. Those will be the ones that you review. Any of the students that need to be screened, if you have to call parents, ask for more information. Any students that need to be screened, it has to be done within 30 days. And in those same 30 days, a placement letter and score report must be sent home to families to inform them of their child's placement. Are they initially fluent and not in need of bilingual or English services, English language services, or is the child an English learner according to the assessment? Next, you will request EL records and access scores for transfer students. Again, if they are transfer students or if they have already taken the access, the WIDA access, they will not be screened. Okay. And then lastly, all EL students should be marked in AIM Infinite Campus with primary language and language of impact marked. This final page is a list of resources. So we have our OPI English Language Acquisition website under federal programs. Those are resources for districts. The Montana Home Language Survey in English and Spanish, EL guidance for school districts, EL checklist for school districts. The first section of links are all on our OPI website. The WIDA screener page is also linked. The Montana WIDA page. So we're part of a consortia with WIDA. And so our page and our assessment contact person is listed on our Montana page. Another thing that is on these links is the OPI EL family and student website. So feel free to add this link to your website, send out to newsletters. Colorín Colorado is a beautiful resource website for teachers and families. So again, this is something that would be very useful to teachers. And although the name is in Spanish, the page is designed for all English learners and educators. This would be another great link to add to your website and newsletters that go out to families. Lastly is a link to the National Clearinghouse for English Language Acquisition. And this is a page that is supported by the Department of Education. Thank you so much. My contact information is on the first slide if you need anything from me or have any questions. Thank you.